a lot, so we're doing global climate change. For a little background, we're in our unit on ecology, and we've gone through kind of the basics about environment and things that can affect it. So right now I'm going to try to get you guys to reflect on what you already know from maybe media sources or conversations with friends. So our learning target today, can anybody read this for me? Can I volunteer to read it out loud? Alyssa.
Students can describe and cite examples of global climate change and effects of human activities on global climate change.
Okay, so we just went over one of the bold words, describe, but the other one is cite examples. Alyssa, since you just read it for us, can you maybe tell us what it means to cite examples?
When you're finding proof within paper or anywhere else.
Perfect.
Supported.
Yeah, so you would use something that has support from somewhere else. So later in class, we would be reading an article, and that's where you would get those examples from, so you would cite the article. Unfortunately, we're not going to get to that point, and we're actually going to ignore the second half, the effects of human activities. We're really going to focus in on global climate change. So can everybody take out a piece of paper? The very first thing I want you guys to do is define in your own words what global climate change is, or what you think it is. Don't be too worried if you haven't gotten it fully written down yet. You're going to have to go back to that. But does anybody want to share their definition?
An increase or decrease in expected or typical planetary or global temperature.
Temperature? Okay, temperature would be one thing, climate change. Does anybody have a broader definition by any chance?
A shift in historical patterns of climate and weather.
That's good. That's a lot broader, so it's going to encompass more things. So the very next thing I want you guys to do is, for a minute, on your own, list what you know about climate change. So now we know that everybody kind of has a basic definition. What do you know about it? I know you've probably heard about it, and if you haven't heard about it, what guesses can you make about it? Can you make any guesses about how it might affect organisms, or maybe what you've seen in the media, or what you think those words can mean? I'm going to give you a minute or so to do that on your own. As you begin to wrap up your list, or think that maybe you're kind of done for now, if you guys can just set your pencils down so I can kind of see. All right, it seems like a lot of you have finished, so what we're going to do next is we're going to be splitting into groups, and we're going to actually discuss this together. So I'm going to ask one person from this table just to switch over there, so it's a little bit more equal, so we have 3 or 4 people in each group. And then what you're going to do is you're going to actually take what you discussed on your own paper and listed, and you're going to work as a team to put something up on the board. It can be a cluster, a map. You can draw a picture with little labels describing it, anything you want, just to show what you already know about global climate change. So feel free to start moving about. Grab a marker or 2 if you want multiple colors. And feel free. I'm going to give you guys probably about 5 minutes to do this. If you wrap up early, then we might start talking sooner. Alyssa. Thank you. Hopefully that works.
What did you say?
What?
We'll see.
So climate change in the middle there. So climate change in the middle, and we'll kind of go over there. So one aspect is the temperature.
It said the same thing.
I was gonna say that can lead to like the melting of ice and other issues.
You can also bubble off of that same idea due to increased levels of CO2. And you can also put increasing.
Can we have more ice with climate change in places and then ice melting in other places?
Mm-hmm. That's the I put that there. Creates bigger swings in weather patterns, hotter hots and colder colds.
Okay. So, but some of that can be off of the climate change. The
Yes,
pollution.
if you wanted a graphic on your cluster, it would go off the top.
Do you guys think that there are any other sort of, other than CO2, that has an impact this? Or like greenhouse gases, perhaps?
I think of them as weather mood swings. The rains are rainier, the heat spells are hotter, the cold spells are colder, the winds are windier. Yeah, you could say larger extremes.
So, what do you think is the difference between like those natural produced ones from the cow versus
Just
like
swear
what's happening at like
much more variations in your residuals.
let out from something less natural? That kind of affecting global climate change. So what's the difference between what we're focusing on now versus what just has been happening with climate change over the last like
With the ice melting adds formation. You could add formation. The ice melting, you could do a slash formation.
Is there any other things besides weather? Like, can you just think of things
You know, it
within
could be
climate
forming.
and not just the weather? So like weather is pretty much just like temperature. So what else could there be?
You can also show that off of ice melting, ice reflects UV radiation back out into space. With less ice, the Earth absorbs more UV radiation and the heating effect increases. It's a feedback loop that gets worse and worse. And then both of us put on our sheets human caused.
Right.
Alright, I'm seeing a lot of good ideas. If you can hear me, clap once. If you can hear me, clap twice. I know that a lot of you are in the middle of doing this right now, but I kind of want to just stop us right now so that everybody can get a chance to walk around and look at the other groups, what they have, to see if there's anything new that you haven't seen. I would normally have you guys present what you put on the boards, but for the sake of time, I'm going to do a gallery walk instead, so just at each section. And if there's something really interesting, if there's a marker nearby, you can go ahead and start if it's something that you didn't think about.
I thought there was a group.
Oh no, that was a rainstorm from earlier. Well, Mallory, I have to think of two things.
It's 9:23.
As you finish up your gallery walk, feel free just to go back to your seats.
More water.
More water, make it more dilute.
Good question. Good
That's actually interesting. Like they haven't even tested that yet at all. I don't know. Because we did talk about the different effects of like things happening in the ocean with CO2, so maybe the ice will help that. Maybe that more dilute. Okay, so you guys saw a lot of ideas on the walls, and as you guys were going, I kind of wrote a couple of vocab words over here that it might be important to define. Like one that I noticed was weather. There's a lot of confusion about what weather is in terms of everything because sometimes people confuse climate and weather. Can anybody tell me what the difference is? Brian?
Climate is the average over time of weather patterns.
Yes, so it's a more long term rather than weather is usually at a specific time and a specific place and it changes rapidly. So when you guys hear about it in the media, do you hear about weather changing or do you think you hear more about climate changing? What do they cite as their evidence usually? Anybody shout it out?
Weather.
You hear about weather usually. So what do you guys think is more supporting that there's actually a global climate change happening right now? Can you guys think of any examples? I saw a lot of them on the board, so I know you have some ideas about what's going on.
Melting polar ice.
Yeah.
Melting polar ice? Alyssa?
Animal migrations have been a big deal. I know they're publishing material where shark breeding areas have moved up the California coast.
Do you think that the sharks are responding to something changing where they originally were? That's a really good sign. Animals often change because the weather changes that we might not notice, or the climate changes that we might not notice, they notice. Is there any other things? I saw some more ideas on the wall. So, Zan?
Ozone depletion would cause more UV radiation, and that'll make it warmer over a longer. Well,
Okay.
yeah.
For people that don't really know, can you explain what an ozone is?
So it's like the protective layer of the atmosphere that makes sure that we don't get as many sunburns.
And then can you explain what the radiation would be? You were
don't-
just explaining what sunburn, so what's
Yeah,
the
you don't. I
radiation?
mean, it's just like you just fry. I'm pretty sure. I'm not really that.
Well, no, yeah, the sun is a type of radiation, so it could hurt everybody if it's coming in. Like, it would get hotter because there's more of it coming in. So, I saw in this group you guys said acid rain. Does anybody want to explain that?
The climate change, from what I remember. With the climate changes, more acid rain is produced in the air, and I can't remember what causes more acid rain.
Does anybody else have any ideas why there would be more acid rain happening with climate change?
There's carbon emissions.
Yeah, so the carbon's going in the water. Like Dan's presentation the other day, so Tuesday, went over, there's more carbon in the water, and that water goes into rain cycles, and that's water being spread everywhere. So do you think that maybe some of the big places that are producers, such as the U.S., might be impacting areas that don't have as much productivity? Okay, so we've already done this. I accidentally forgot to put it up. But next, I'm going to have you on that piece of paper that you wrote your definition in your list. You're going to just draw a line so that you can separate this idea. And now I'm going to write down either something you learned or some questions that you have now that you've started to think about global climate change again. So like I've heard some ideas about maybe like would melting ice caps help some of the pollution in the water because it makes it more or less concentrated? Would that help? Or is there any other thoughts you can come up with right now? Just write down one or two really quickly. You guys can feel free to stop now because I'm just going to kind of wrap it up. This would be the kind of thing I do right before I start the next activity. And so the rest of the activity would be, we'd be going to reading an article that actually gives scientific evidence for and against global climate change so that you can form your own opinion about whether or not it's happening. Then we'd have another group discussion where you go from working in pairs of 2 to working in pairs of 4 to kind of come up with a 2-sentence little summary of what you've learned from the article. And then you'd go and do a raft prompt where you're actually explaining climate change and whether or not it's true to help a legislator or help a senator as he's going through doing some legislature. So, and this would be more of a probing them to get them more involved in this, as climate change isn't generally something that's highly covered in biology classes. I thought I'd just give that background.